When you stand in front of a mirror, take a moment and think, what exactly do you see here? Your face, your hair, maybe the tiredness in your eyes? But the truth is this, you never actually see yourself in the mirror. The mirror simply shows an image, a reflection of you. The real you is the one looking at that image, the one noticing it, and that raises an interesting question. Who is the one doing the looking? This is where things start to get strange. You can think about yourself, but it also feels as if another observer inside you is watching that thought. And then it seems as though yet another observer is watching that observer, almost like an endless chain inside the mind. Philosophers call this idea the observation of the observer, and it leads us into a deep and slightly unsettling place in human thought. Of course, one of humanity's greatest abilities is self-awareness, but here lies the paradox. The very trait that allows us to understand ourselves is often the same trait that becomes the source of our deepest unease. And strangely enough, almost no one explains this openly. Schools rarely talk about it. Most psychology books quietly pass by the subject. Yet this paradox unfolds in our minds every single day, whether we notice it or not. In this video, we're going to step inside that paradox together. So get ready, because some truths, once you see them, can never be unseen. And before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support motivates us to keep creating new videos, and seeing our community grow truly makes us happy. Now, let's begin. What is self-awareness, really? People often explain self-awareness in a very simple way. Knowing yourself. But that's like calling a massive mountain just a big rock. The words are correct, but they don't capture the full meaning. In reality, self-awareness, that is, the human ability to recognize and understand oneself, is one of the strangest and most fascinating phenomena in the universe. Think about it for a moment. Over the 13.8 billion years of cosmic history, atoms formed first, then they combined into molecules. Molecules became cells, and cells eventually created brains. And at some point, a brain emerged that could observe itself. In other words, the universe for the first time started looking at itself. It's a mind-blowing thought, and at the same time, a slightly unsettling one, because the ability to be self-aware brings with it difficult questions. Philosopher and neuroscientist Antonio Damasio explains that self-awareness has two levels. The first is the core self. This is simple, immediate consciousness. For example, the feeling of sitting in a chair, tasting food in your mouth, hearing the sounds around you. The second level is the autobiographical self. This is more complex. It includes your memories, your past, your plans, your fears, and your hopes for the future. And this is where the paradox begins. The moment you ask yourself, "Who am I?" you are already trying to observe yourself from the outside. You step back, in a sense, to examine your own mind. But here's the strange part. The one observing from the outside is still you. The observer and the observed are the same. That's why you can never completely step out of this circle. And this is precisely what makes human consciousness so fascinating and mysterious. In the 17th century, French philosopher René Descartes proposed a famous idea, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. This statement is considered one of the strongest foundations of philosophy. It seems to be the simplest and most powerful argument for proving human existence. Yet, within this statement lies a hidden question. When you say, I think, who exactly is doing the thinking? At first glance, the answer seems simple. I am thinking. But the problem starts here. What is this I? If I are the thoughts, then there's an issue, because thoughts are constantly changing. What you were thinking a few minutes ago may now be entirely different. Maybe the I is your body, but biology shows that the body is not completely fixed either. Most of your cells renew themselves over the years, meaning your physical self is continuously changing. So maybe the I is your memories. But psychology offers another interesting twist. Every time a person recalls a memory, the brain seems to rewrite it. Memories, too, are not completely stable. They change over time. So a strange situation arises. The I looks at itself and realizes that everything it observes is constantly changing. Thoughts change, the body changes, memories change. Nothing remains completely stable. And at this point, a deeply unsettling question emerges. If the I we speak of is always changing, is there really a stable I at all? Interestingly, this question is not new. About 2,500 years ago, Buddhist philosophers were asking the same thing. They called it anatta, or no self. According to this idea, there is no unchanging, permanent I within a person. When we say I, we are not pointing to a fixed entity, we are referring to a constantly evolving process. In other words, a human is not like a stone, solid and unchanging. We are more like a river, always flowing, constantly renewed in every moment. What's fascinating is that Western psychology, in recent decades, has gradually begun to converge with this perspective. And here, the paradox becomes clear. A person tries to understand themselves, but the deeper they look, the more elusive the stable I becomes. This realization can sometimes bring a profound sense of freedom, but for many, the first encounter with it brings something else entirely: unease, and even a touch of fear. Now, let me tell you something fascinating. In quantum physics, there's a famous principle: observing something changes it. To measure the state of an electron, you have to shine a photon of light on it, but that very photon alters the electron's path. In other words, the act of observation itself changes what is being observed. Looking at yourself works in much the same way. Psychological research shows that the moment people start observing their own emotions or behaviors, those very feelings and actions begin to shift. In psychology, this phenomenon is called reactivity. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "Why am I so angry?" the anger itself often starts to diminish. But at the same time, something else emerges, a second you, the observer of yourself. In psychotherapy, this is known as the observing ego. Most therapeutic approaches aim to strengthen this ability because the capacity to see yourself from the outside is key to healing. But this powerful tool also carries a significant risk. When the observer becomes too strong, when you start analyzing every word, every action, every feeling, life can freeze. Therapists call this analysis paralysis. A dancer who overthinks every step loses the dance. A speaker who pre-analyzes every sentence can't speak at all. Observing yourself too closely can prevent you from truly living. And that's the paradox. Self-awareness is both a form of freedom and a new kind of imprisonment. Both sides belong to the same coin. Friends, another difficult aspect of self-awareness is its relationship with time. Unlike other creatures, humans don't live solely in the present. We remember the past and constantly think about, plan for, and worry about the future. This ability has allowed us to create civilizations, build cities, and achieve incredible progress. But the same trait is also the source of much of our mental unease. Psychologist Martin Seligman once said, "Humans are essentially future-oriented creatures. A large part of our brain works to imagine events that haven't yet happened. This is a major reason for anxiety. Even when there is no real danger, a person can feel stress simply because they're imagining something that might happen." And here comes an even deeper question. When you say I, which I are you actually referring to? The you from 10 years ago no longer exists. That person's thoughts, perspectives, and values may have completely changed. Even their loves and fears were different. And the you of the future does not yet exist. That person has not yet formed. So a curious situation emerges. The present you is like a fleeting moment suspended between past and future. Philosopher Derek Parfit devoted much of his life to exploring this question. He showed that as time passes, a person's identity shifts, making the concept of the same person increasingly uncertain. Imagine, for instance, if half of your brain were transplanted into another body, which outcome would truly be you? At first, this question seems strange, even humorous, but upon reflection, it becomes clear. The I we speak of is far less fixed than we assume. And this paradox often pulls people in two directions. Some get stuck in the past, which can lead to depression. Others are constantly anxious about the future, which creates worry and stress. The most difficult path, however, is the third one, living fully in the present moment, because the now is always slipping away. The instant you try to grasp it, it has already become the past. Another aspect of self-awareness is that we often see ourselves through the eyes of others. Sociologist Charles Cooley called this the looking glass self. We form our sense of self by imagining how others perceive us. In other words, part of your self-awareness is shaped by the projections that others place on you. If your mother told you as a child, "You're very sensitive," chances are you now see yourself as a sensitive person, even if that isn't entirely true. If a teacher once said, "You're no good at math," that idea may have taken root inside you. And here lies the paradox. You look inward to discover who you are, but part of what you see inside is actually what others have put there. How much of your deepest beliefs about yourself truly belong to you, and how much is merely a reflection of others' perceptions? Modern social media has only intensified this problem. Today, people constantly see themselves through the eyes of others, through likes, comments, and follower counts. This social mirror can distance you from your own self. The line between narcissism and self-loathing becomes dangerously thin. Researcher Brené Brown has studied this for years. She points out that asking yourself, "Am I good enough?" is one of the most universal questions for modern humans, and this question arises directly from that mirror, the mirror of other people's eyes. Yet the heaviest burden of self-awareness is this: you know you will die. Other animals experience fear of death. It is an instinct, but they do not know death conceptually. A dog doesn't lie awake wondering if it might die tonight. A bird doesn't go to sleep thinking it won't exist tomorrow. But you do. Psychologist Ernest Becker, in his Pulitzer-winning book, The Denial of Death, 1973, proposed a remarkable thesis. Much of human culture, religion, art, politics, economics, even love, is essentially a mechanism to manage our awareness of death. Civilization itself has emerged as a way to cope with mortality. This realization is terrifying, but the paradox is even deeper. Self-awareness introduces you to death, and yet awareness of death drives you to live more fully, to love more deeply, and to seek meaning more passionately. In other words, death is simultaneously life's most powerful engine. In ancient Greece, there was a saying, "Memento mori," remember that you are mortal. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily notes to himself, reminding himself of his own death. The Stoics believed that contemplating death does not make it terrifying, it makes life precious. Here the paradox becomes perfectly clear. When you become self-aware, you know you will die. When you know you will die, you want to live. And when you want to live, you need to understand yourself even more deeply. This cycle never ends. So the question arises, what should we do? The honest answer is this: the paradox cannot be solved. It was never meant to be solved. It exists to be experienced. But there is an important distinction. Fighting the paradox is one thing, accepting it is another. In Taoism, there is the concept of Wu Wei, the natural flow. It means letting things follow their own course. To stop observing the observer is simply to be. In Zen Buddhism, the koans, illogical, paradoxical questions, exist for the same purpose, to quiet the analytical mind. Modern psychology draws inspiration from this ancient wisdom in the practice of mindfulness. But notice, mindfulness is not meant to increase self-awareness. It is meant to reduce the tension between the observer and the observed. You stop asking, "Why do I feel this way?" and simply learn to be present in the feeling itself. Philosopher Alan Watts described this beautifully with a metaphor. The eye cannot see itself. The eye exists to see, not to see itself. Likewise, you exist to be, not to analyze yourself. Analysis is a tool, not a goal. Yet, escaping self-awareness is not the answer either. A person who cannot see themselves cannot truly see others. Empathy begins with self-awareness. Ethical choices require self-awareness. Friends, this video is not about a problem. It's about the possibility that emerges from the problem. The paradox of self-awareness, the fact that the I that wants to see itself can never fully do so, is not a weakness. It is a window opening to infinity. Because if something can never be completely understood, it means there is always a new layer to discover. You are always one step beyond yourself. This may seem daunting, but think about it. It also means you can always grow. You can always change. When you look in the mirror, you see a reflection. That reflection is not you. It is merely a snapshot of a single moment. The real you is the one observing that snapshot. And that observer is never fully visible in any mirror because it is the thing that opens its eyes to look. It is not the thing being looked at. Perhaps this is the true gift of self-awareness. Nothing ever fully defines you. You are always within the question, and the question is more alive than the answer. Let's return to the question we asked at the beginning. When you looked in the mirror this morning, what did you see? At first glance, the answer seems simple. You saw your face, your hair, your eyes. Perhaps you even noticed your tiredness or your mood. But in reality, what you saw in the mirror was just the body, a shape, an image. The truly interesting part lies elsewhere. The one looking at that image, that's you, is something entirely different from what the mirror reflects. You are not a fixed object. You are a changing process, a flowing stream, an ever-renewing experience. Your thoughts change, your feelings change, your perspectives evolve over time. No mirror can fully show this, because a mirror only reflects the visible surface. Your identity is far more than what is seen. It is a stream composed of memories, thoughts, choices, fears, and hopes. This is why the paradox of self-awareness can sometimes be unsettling. The deeper a person reflects, the more questions arise. Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? These questions have no end. Yet there's another side to this paradox: freedom. If you are not fixed and unchanging, your past does not define you entirely. The mistakes you made yesterday do not make you the same person forever. You can change, grow, and become a new person. Likewise, the future is not yet written. The truth is this: you are neither your entirely past nor your not yet existent future. You are a being forming in this very moment. There's a delicate space between the observer and the observed. Life happens precisely in that space, and most people miss it because they are either dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. Perhaps the greatest question of self-awareness is not "Who am I?" Perhaps it is this: I am greater than this question. If these ideas, consciousness, reality, in the inner world of humans make you reflect, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective is fascinating. Do you think a human can truly understand themselves, or will there always remain an unopened mystery within the mind? I will read every comment you leave.